Evening, everyone. It's been a quick day already. My name is Allison Pelhes. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Multi-Faith Coordinator at Elon's Truett Center for Religious and Spiritual Life. It's my pleasure to put together this Winterfaith Week, as we're calling it, with Randy at Elon Community Church. Before we move on to our panel, I want to remind folks that tomorrow we have another speaker. We will hear an Indigenous Saponi perspective from Miss Vicki Jeffries, who is a traditional dancer and tribal administrator for the Occaneechi Saponi Tribal Nation in Alamance County. Ms. Jeffries has worked for physicians for 35 years and retired from UNC Family Medicine in Chapel Hill recently. She's a beader, basket weaver, and Indigenous herbalist. So we hope you will register for our conversation tomorrow at 12:15 via Zoom. And later on, I'll add that link to the chat to register. This afternoon, we will hear from Pallavi Tadapudi. After graduating from medical school at Stony Brook, Pallavi joined their five-year combined adult psychiatry residency program and fellowship in child and adolescent psychiatry. Growing up in Hindu community as a young woman, and then later attending Jesuit institution of Georgetown University, she has found a unique perspective of spirituality. We are so thrilled to have her share a bit about her tradition as a lifelong student of Vedanta Hinduism. As a reminder, we suggest that you keep your mics off, and I can mute you if I need to, so I hope you respect that little rule we have. For 40 minutes, we will hear from Pallavi, and then we'll have a short Q&A, at which point I will open the chat feature so you can send your questions. Then I will read through them and prompt them to Pallavi. So thank you for joining us for Winterfaith 2021. Before we begin, I'm going to pass the mic to my student, Elle, who is an interfaith intern at the Truett Center, and she will be leading us in a short blessing.
Thanks, Allison. Okay, so for today, I'm going to read one of my very favorite poems, The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. And I thought that this poem was appropriate for just kind of the climate that we're in right now and all the stress and anxiety surrounding our current times. So, when despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world, and I am free.
Namaste, everyone, and good evening. My name is Pallavi Tadapudi, and thank you so much for organizing this wonderful event. I think Winterfaith, what a name. It's so inspiring to be here and to be in a community of people who, want to come together and create this harmony, especially in today's world. So just thank you so much for having me. So I wanted to begin by explaining what Namaste means. So when I join my hands together and when I bow my head like this and say Namaste, that the meaning of that word is that I salute the God in you. And so I just wanted to explain why we often say that and why that's our greeting. It's a way to serve and salute and honor the living God that is in each one of us, according to the Hindu philosophy. So I just wanted to start with that. And I wanted to also begin with a prayer. I have my harmonium here, which is down here. It is a wonderful instrument that we use in prayer very often. And it's a prayer called Tvameva Mata. So the meaning of this prayer, it means you alone are my mother. You alone are my father. You alone are my brother. You alone are my friend. You alone are my knowledge. You alone are my prosperity. You alone are my everything, O my God of gods. Om Tvameva Mata Japita Tvameva Tvameva सखा त्वमेव त्वमेव देव्या द्रविणं त्वमेव त्वमेव सर्वं मम देव देव. I hope you could hear that. I know virtual things distort it sometimes, but one day, hopefully we can all, enjoy this back live, but I'm very happy that we can have this virtual community together. So I wanted to start by explaining a little bit about my background. And I would love to, anytime you have questions, please feel free to type it in the chat. And even after the session, would be happy to discuss any questions to make this, lifelong discussion. There's a lot to learn, and I would love to also learn from all of you about your experiences. So as a Indian American, I was born in New York, and my parents came from India, and I grew up in the suburbs of New York without much of a Indian or Hindu community in my school. So a lot of times, some of our holidays wouldn't really be mentioned in school. And it was definitely this kind of balance of trying to figure out who am I in America while identifying as an American and also an Indian, and how and where can I find my place. And I attended, and I feel so fortunate to have been able to attend a Hindu Sunday school called Vivekananda Vidyapith. And it's a character building education from kindergarten to 12th grade, where we had teachers and other volunteers who, all of us, as we were trying to navigate our place in the world and what our relationship is to Hinduism, which was introduced by many of our parents, what that means to us. And the point of this school was to build a temple in the hearts of all the children who attended, and to really explain, and it kind of inspired these ideas in us and figure out who we want to be and how we want to be. And the main messages that were taught were be good and do good. That's the most simple way I can kind of explain it. And the uncle and auntie, so we all call them lovingly uncle and auntie, the founders of our Sunday school. They are like our most inspiring teachers, and they have created this Sunday school. And the teachings are based on these three people. I always call them my gurus, which means our teachers, that we believe to be our incarnations of God. And I'll introduce you to them. So in the middle here, we have Sri Ramakrishna, and they lived in the 1800s in India. So in the middle is Sri Ramakrishna. And then we have Sri Sharda Devi, also known as Holy Mother. And then we have Swami Vivekananda. You might have heard that name. He came to America, gave a speech in the World Parliament of Religions in 1893. So these three are on our altar at our Sunday school, and the prayers that we learned growing up, and the Vedanta philosophy, which is a philosophy of Hinduism, that's what we were nurtured in. And many of the quotes and our ties to Hinduism are through these three gurus or teachers. And so, growing up, having that place to be able to ask these questions of what does Hinduism mean to me? Why do I go to the temple? Why do I pray? Why do I pray this way? Why do I want to pray this way? Do I want to pray this way? And all of these questions, we had a place to go to and a place to ask these as kids, growing up. And it was very beautiful experience seeing alumni who had gone through this program. It's been, this institution has been there for coming on 45 years soon. And seeing that, they were able to all explore the world, and somehow they found it important to come back and teach us and be our summer camp counselors, be our teachers back at our Sunday school, and explain to us how Hinduism has helped them navigate life was very inspiring for us. And it really made us want to find that nectar and find that sense of stability and peace within this religion, but also in spirituality in general, and to make our own relationship really with God. So through our Sunday school, we learned Sanskrit. You might have heard this language. Our scriptures, Hindu scriptures, the Bhagavad-Gita, the Upanishads, the Vedas, they're written in this language called Sanskrit. So we learned that growing up, which was very helpful because when we say our shlokas, which is another word for the verses, when we would repeat them, we were able to read it in the authentic language, which is very helpful. And then also learn the translation so that in English, we can also understand exactly what's being said. So that closeness with the original text was very helpful to feel that bond with all these ancient words that have a place and have a meaning today and aren't just for those times, but have to be thought of how to apply right now, right here. Then we also learned Harmonium, which I was playing before, and I'll play a few more things for you because one of the things we learn is that each, the main, I can say, like message from Swami Vivekananda that he put into these beautiful words is each soul is potentially divine. I'll repeat it again. Each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity both externally and internally. And we have like 4 yogas. You might have heard this before. So the word yoga to us means union with God and a way to unite with God. So we have these 4 paths: Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Raja Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. And you can think of it as different flavors of ways of connecting. For me, Bhakti Yoga is, so each of the ways, it's through faith, through music, through the arts, through devotion, through philosophy, logic, reasoning, through studying scriptures, learning, reading, and then through meditation and deep going into solitude and exploring within. So each of these, usually, a combination of all of them is what we hope to achieve. But sometimes you have a tendency, more towards one. Your personality might fit more closely with one. And for me, Bhakti Yoga, Bhakti means faith. And it means devotion. It's not that it's an active, dynamic devotion that makes you pursue a friendship with God. And not something stagnant or an intellectual idea, but something that really motivates you and pulls you to be good and do good, essentially. So Bhakti Yoga for me has been a very helpful way to befriend God through music and through reciting all the shlokas that we've learned, the verses, or reciting our hymns. We use the word bhajan, dhoon or bhajan to mean the music that we sing. So when I connect that way, I feel like so propelled towards God, and it's easier for me to be in that devotional state when I'm around music or these or type of poetry or these types of things that can really link me and think about my relationship with God. And then unselfish service, Karma Yoga, unselfish service. So through the work that I do, I'm like in the psychiatry program. So I'm a first-year resident. And through the work that I do, I try to embody my life and my spiritual pursuits as a devotee. Try to approach my work in a very living and breathable way. By approaching each patient that I have, everybody has a story, everybody has God within from the Hindu perspective. And by approaching each person as with that utmost respect and with that utmost interest, true interest in knowing them and having that connection, because there is no difference between me and them. Nobody is a stranger. Holy Mother here, one of her lines is, do not find faults with others, find faults with one's own self, and nobody is a stranger, my child. She always repeated that. No one is a stranger, my child. So especially in these times, if we can remember that everybody, we have a global family, not even global, but anyone, all beings, that there is some connection, some thread that connects us all. And I think in my field, it's wonderful because it feeds right into that, in psychiatry. And I'm so thankful for finding this field, which really does help my spiritual life. And when I was at Georgetown, actually, one of the reasons why I wanted to attend Georgetown, the Jesuit institution, was because one of our alumni from our Sunday school, who was older, a few years older than me, I remember him coming back one day, back to our Sunday school, and he said, I feel that I'm becoming a better Hindu by attending.
Okay, come. But remember, it's for Miss Erin.
Hearing that was so amazing, that one is becoming closer to, their own faith and diving deep in their own faith by being in a place that nurtures conversation about religion and what spirituality means to each of us. And it really inspired me, because I thought, wow, when I go away from home, I want to be brought closer to what I feel is my home, which is my own understanding of my faith. And so to hear that he was inspired and had the network there to learn about other religions and learn more about his own was absolutely wonderful. And I thought that would be an amazing opportunity to attend this institution. And I definitely found that to be true, working with interfaith groups in the campus ministry, which is very developed. And since then, we have a Hindu chaplain, which was a big pursuit that we were trying to work on, to have kind of representation for all faiths, and to have everybody have some type of resource that they could go to on campus, especially as students, when you have so many questions about life and how to bring your faith into college life, when you're, essentially you can decide if you want to go to services or not. It's your own decision about what you want to make your spirituality. So I think at that time, having campus ministry and having that type of resource was very, very inspiring and nurturing. And I wanted to kind of explain also, the essence of Hinduism as I understand it. And one disclaimer, faith is a very personal thing. How I practice Hinduism is how I practice Hinduism. And it does not speak to everybody's experience. This is a subjective thing that I, can offer my thoughts. And I would urge you, that if you meet others who practice this faith, to speak with them also, and that it might be, they might have a different side and a different lens, but this, I'm just presenting my lens and the way that I experience Hinduism. So that's a really important point that I'd like to share. So Hinduism, there's one common misconception that I've found over time that I wanted to clarify, that Hinduism is a monotheistic religion. We have this concept of God that lives within each person, and there are many forms of God. You guys may have seen different forms. So, many people know of Lord Ganesha, who is half human, half elephant, and he is often the one that we pray to in the beginning, because at the beginning of some auspicious times, as the one who removes all obstacles. And each of these forms, you might have heard, we have a version of the Trinity, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. So the creator, preserver, destroyer. So there are many, many, many forms. And if you look into it, you will find. And the reason why, these are all different forms of the formless God. And there's no difference in any of the forms. But the reason why there are so many is that, just like, each of us may like a different type of ice cream, right? We may all, sometimes want to eat chocolate. We might sometimes want to eat vanilla, but they're all ice cream. So the same way that this is in Hinduism, regardless of which form that we are worshiping, many times in family traditions, there might be, a certain form that family has been dedicated to for several years. And in that town where they grew up, there might have been that idol and that temple that's there. But importantly, neither form is above or below the others. And all are ways for us to connect to this idea of God that should unite us all. And as I was saying, serving the living God, there's this nice example that I learned as a kid, that this story that, there was a devotee and the devotee was in a rush, was so much looking forward to going to the temple. And on the way, there was traffic, was getting very upset that he was getting late, and was getting upset and, yelling and not feeling so patient. And even when he was about to go into the temple doors, he, even pushed some of the people experiencing homelessness who were by the temple steps, right? All to get to the doors to offer the most respect to God within the temple. And the lesson that we were always taught is God is everywhere, and how we live and every moment of our life, how we engage and the respect and inherent love that we show. Every opportunity is an opportunity to pray, and not just on Sundays, maybe when you go to, your place of worship. That spiritual life is in every moment, and how we interact with everything, whether it's, do we make our bed, because, these things belong to God. God has given us this life and has given us all these things, and that we honor and respect that. So that aspect has been very helpful, because I always remembered this saying too, that spiritual life, it's not, like a weekend thing. It's, for me, I feel that it's an every moment thing. And I just wanted to emphasize that. And I think in our Sunday school, this concept of be good and do good, and more of that, friendship with God always was something that was emphasized. So one other thing that we were learning growing up is about holy company. We would often, Uncle would, in our assemblies, he often describes how many different ways to connect, but one is holy company. So being with other minds who are, especially we have swamis in the tradition that we follow from the Ramakrishna mission. There are centers all over the US and India, all over the world, who also practice Hinduism and Vedanta, and similarly pray to Thakur, Ma, and Swamiji here. So being in their company and hearing their words, and we are, like, our thoughts, our actions, our deeds, everything, the more that we're in an uplifted environment, can really help our spiritual life. So being in holy company is something that is stressed a lot, as well as engaging in unselfish service, and then reading inspiring books. So I always have my stash of readings here. One of the books is called The Eternal Companion here. One of them that I'm reading now is A Disciple's Journal. And then one of the main books that we often read is the Gospel of Sri Ramakrish, who is the one in the center there. And his words were recorded by his direct disciple, M. And so we get a sense of the teachings that he was trying to convey. And so we read this every day as a guidance, that, he wasn't just telling the people at those times, but he's speaking to us now, and what can we learn and what can we apply right now. So, and then also meditation and focusing on the God that's within us, but also the God that is in everybody. And another concept that we talk about is harmony of religions. In our 11th grade class, that was the title of one of our classes. And we talk about how every religion, these are all different ways to connect to God. These are all different streams that lead to the one ocean. So regardless of which path, they all lead to that same mountain peak. And often in our places of worship in Hinduism, you will find that we will have Buddha, as seen there. We will have many of our different Hindu gods there, all representing that same one. We will have Jesus Christ there, and many different forms. And oftentimes we celebrate many holidays kind of all together, and seeing how the divine comes in all these different forms. So that harmony of religions is a very central point in our faith. And I also wanted to share that recently I was at the Veterans Affairs Hospital serving, or in my internal medicine rotation as part of our psychiatry residency training. And I had a patient there on Christmas Eve who, on the 20th of December, he was the 3-year anniversary of his wife passing away. And he was having a very hard time, had found out that he had been diagnosed with, previously he had been diagnosed with a lung condition and it had worsened, and now he had less than 6 months to live. And Christmas Eve, I was working and he was there, does not have much family around. And I remember talking to him, and that day, the chaplain who was available was a rabbi. And it was a rabbi came to visit him, spoke to him about his faith and how he is coping with these, troubling circumstances amongst the pandemic, but also just in general with his specific scenario, being alone in the hospital with a terminal condition without family to update, and around the time that he lost his wife. And after that chaplain visit, and one of my favorite parts about medicine too is making sure that my patients have that option to meet the chaplain, connect them to the resources if that is of interest to them. It's a really important part, being in a hospital when you are very separate from your home, your whole sense of who you are, and you almost are distilled down to what condition you have. And I really try to get away from that and understand the person as a mother, as a sister, as an aunt, as a friend, as a neighbor. We have all these roles. We are have so many identities, and understanding people on their whole was definitely also Jesuit principle, cura personalis, care for the whole person. That was emphasized a lot. But so this patient, it honestly was one of the most probably spiritual experiences I've had with him. And it was one of my last days there, in around that Christmas time, working at the VA. And he gave me this, and I want to show you. He gave me this photo of Jesus Christ to keep. And he, I couldn't even express what that meant to me. We had talked about the meaning of life, amidst all the busy days of knowing what his electrolytes, what numbers everything is, and, all of the medical side of everything. This is why I do medicine, this connection. We talked about how it is scary to approach death, what his relationship with God is, and all of these things which are so hard almost to put into words, especially, when you are, you've just met. But I remember Holy Mother's words that no one is a stranger, my child, right? If we are able to connect with people for the essence of who they are, we can have these very meaningful moments amidst crisis, essentially. And I've added this since to my altar, which is over there, because it's extremely meaningful to me. And I always want to remember that regardless of whichever career I am in, whatever setting I practice in, I want to connect to people as a human being. There's a quote that says, don't be a human doing, but a human being. And I think as a practicer of Hinduism, that's what I try to do. And I try to be very intentional about how I want to be and who I want to be. But I wanted to share this because, it's so ironic because on his hand, he had a watch, and it's so ironic because he's the one who doesn't have much time in his physical body, and I was thinking, this is such a profound moment, and how can I, be your family? We are of different faiths, and there are so many differences, but there is so much that brings us together. And I think that using whichever lens of faith that we practice, to remember that is very important. So I wanted to share with my harmonium. There's a few things I just wanted to share with you musically and tell you the meaning of, which I think capture what we learn in our Sunday school about Hinduism and the essence, and as I said before, like the pure nectar of what, to me, Hinduism means. So the first is from the Bhagavad-Gita. There are 18 chapters in the Bhagavad-Gita. It takes, if you were to recite the whole thing, it would take several hours. This is from chapter 12 of the Bhagavad-Gita, and it's about Bhakti Yoga, which is funny, but the one that I vibe with very much. And every week in our Sunday school, the students all stand up and they recite this and then the meaning of it, which I will read to you as well. Would you prefer I read the English beforehand or after I say it in Sanskrit? I can do either one. I don't mind. Sounds good. Okay. So I'll say it in Sanskrit first. And these are Gita chapter 12, shloka or verses 13 to 19. Om Advishna Sarva Bhutanam Maitra Karunai Vacha Nirmamo Nirahankara Samadukha Sukakshami Santushna Satatam Yogi Yatatma Drida Nishchayaha Mayarpita Mano Buddhi Yo Madhanta Same Priyaha Yasmano Dvijati Loko Lokano Dvijati Chayaha Harsha Marsha Bhayo Dvegai Mukto Yasachame Priyaha Anapeksha Shuchir Daksha Udasino Gatavyataha Sarvarambha Parityagi Yomadhanta Same Priyaha Yo Nareshyati Nadrishti Nashochati Nagakshati Shubha Shubha Parityagi Bhakti Manya Same Priyaha Samashatro Cha Mitre Cha Tatha Manapamanayoha Shitoshna Sukha Dukkeshu Samasanga Vivarjitaha Tulyadikta Stutilmoni Santushto Yena Kenachit Aniketa Stiramati Bhakti Mani Priyo Naraha. So the meaning of it is my beloved bhakta, which means devotee. So it's God describing his most beloved devotee. And it's a set of qualities. So he who hates none, who is a friend of all, who is merciful to all, who has nothing of his own, who is free from egotism, who is even-minded in pain and pleasure, who is forbearing, who is always satisfied, who is ever devoted to yoga, whose self has become controlled, whose will is firm, whose mind and intellect are given unto me, such a one is my beloved bhakta. He from whom comes no disturbance, who cannot be disturbed by others, who is free from joy, fear, and anxiety, such a one is my beloved. He who does not depend on anything, who is pure and active, who does not care whether good comes or evil, and never becomes miserable, who has given up all efforts for himself, same in praise or in blame, silent and thoughtful, pleased with what little comes his way, homeless, having the whole world for his home, and steady in his mind. Such a one is my beloved Bhakta. So that was, it's a set of qualities that even if we work on a few in our lifetime, I feel that it would be a life worth living. And then we have these 3 sets of poems that we say every week as well, which are in English. And it goes, little drops of water, little grains of sand, make the mighty ocean and the pleasant land. So the little moments, humble though they be, make the mighty ages of eternity. Little deeds of kindness, little words of love, help to make earth happy like the heaven above. Let me hear, O God, the words that are good and sweet. Let me see the beautiful things that fill my heart with joy. Let me have a strong body to sing thy glories, devote my life to your work. A mother's heart, a hero's will, softest flowers, sweetest feel, the charm and force that ever sway, the altar fires flaming play, the strength that leads, in love obeys, far-reaching dreams and patient ways, eternal faith in self in all, light divine in great and small. All these and more than I could see, today may Mother grant to thee. So we always recite these poems to try to kind of remember in simple words, especially for a kid in kindergarten, who's just, trying to figure out the world and explore the world. These poems kind of help us distill all the knowledge that's in our scriptures and can sometimes seem so big and overwhelming about how to make our own. And so these are very friendly ways to remember really like the major point. And I think that has been very helpful for my understanding of my faith, that it has become very accessible through the help of my Sunday school and with my parents and the community at Georgetown, and with my family and with the friends that I've kept in the Holy Company. But to really just remember the essence and the details of how you practice, if you pray in the morning and evening, if you what set of prayers you do, the most important, which are also Gandhi's words, which we keep on the back of our prayer book, is that, and I just want to read this one point, that it says, do not worry about the form of prayer. Let it be any form. And these are Mahatma Gandhi's words. Let it be any form. It should be such as can put us into communion with the divine. Only, whatever be the form, let not the spirit wander while the words of prayer run out of the mouth. And so I think that's the kind of essence, that regardless of which verses we want to say, or, which exact prayers, if that feeling, that inner feeling, that only we can know if we're practicing that way, right? And we have to be honest with ourselves about how focused and intentional we are with our spiritual life. But it's only we can really answer that. But to have that intentionality, to put our full focus and full heart into our relationship with God. So I definitely want to have time for questions, so I can sprinkle other things in as we answer questions, but I just really wanted to say thank you so much for this opportunity, and I just feel very thankful, so thank you so much.
And we are grateful for you, and I see thumbs up too, which is great, and I'm sure if we were in a normal setting and you were speaking to us in person, there would be lots of claps and thank yous, and I'm seeing hearts and all sorts of stuff. So thank you, Pallavi, truly. I think what's really fun and fresh to me is hearing younger folks talk about their spirituality and how they've held on to it as that solid foundation for any discipline they encounter or hard moment in life where they hit a low. So I appreciate you sharing all of it. We do have a few questions in the chat. And folks, the chat is open, so you can add them as we're chatting. and I will bring them to you. So, question from Randy is, do you think you have an Americanization of your expression of faith? And he says it seems that you're free of certain renditions of Hinduism he's experienced with caste and past lives and things like that. So, two-part question. Yeah.
Sure. And I just wanted to take a look at the chat for a minute.
Yeah, you'll see it there too.
Yeah. So what I have seen, when I think there's different aspects. So when Hinduism is kind of approached as a more historical way, or from a kind of perspective of learning it, I guess more from, I would say like from the historical point of view, then there can be things that kind of seem contradictory, and some of these aspects which often turn people of my age away from these practices. And I think what has been very helpful about my Sunday school is that and just the way that the Ramakrishna mission kind of talks about Hinduism and Vedanta is kind of a lot of times, like, we don't, the social aspect or the cultural aspect of this or the political aspect, where things kind of get entangled, we often like focus on how we can apply these things to uplift ourselves and to bring unity. One of the main messages of Hinduism really is this harmony of understanding and alignment, and things that make, if we have basically practicing this faith should bring unity. And so things that in historical, so some of these practices, I know he mentioned like the caste system and different things like that, that I kind of see more as a historical part of maybe Indian history. And so the way that I kind of separate those two is because I identify as spiritual and proudly religious. And I know oftentimes we say like many people say spiritual but not religious. And I think my upbringing has helped me kind of sparse out some of these historical aspects that, do have a lot of suffering and kind of division with the part that I want to practice, which is bringing about unity, which is really the essence of the religion.
I'm seeing snaps, which is a good sign. And I really appreciate your answer. I think it's sometimes hard to sparse out what parts of religion versus belief and spirituality and how both impact us constantly.
Exactly. And often there's this, I've heard this explanation that if you put all the prophets together, they would all come together and, there would be a lot of harmony. But sometimes if you had a room full of like the devotees, perhaps of different religions, there might be more differences. But inherently, all the messages of each of the prophets of each of these religions is to bring about unity. That's my take on it.
Totally. I did get a question in my email, and I see it in the chat too. I want to jump to that because of you talking about your altar and adding different figures to it. So there's a question that asks how you're led, or how do you choose what you put, or which holy ones you put on your altar?
Sure. Yeah. So, and I can actually, can I show you my altar? Well, it's funny because we're all virtual, right? So it's actually very cool because even my Sunday school now has been virtual. So it's very interesting because all the students, when they join classes and everything, and we are teaching them, we can see, it's almost like bringing our Sunday school into each home. And you can really like see, like as I said, we have so many identities. And if we can make our home environment such that it is like radiating that spiritual energy, And that's what the pandemic honestly is also teaching us, right? That we cannot necessarily go to our faith community, like gather as we would, but how we can pull on that strength and that feeling of togetherness, even when we are apart. It's definitely tough, but this pandemic is teaching us almost also the importance of solitude and having that time away to really like reflect on our own about how we want to be and who we want to be. So I'll show you. Yeah. So my altar, this is exciting. Okay, hold on. I hope you can see even if I move this. So my altar here has, so the same images. So Sri Ramakrishna here, Swamiji here, and Holy Mother on this side. And it's the same way that our altar at our Sunday school is set up. Then I also have in our tradition, in the Ramakrishna mission, if you have, been initiated as a disciple, then you might also keep the lineage of like teachers leading up to Sri Ramakrishna in the middle. So that's why I have these additional photos. And then up here, hard to see a little bit, but I keep Ganesha here, who's seated here. And then I also keep this angel. And so I really just kind of made it my own in a way. And I took aspects of my altar as well and put them here. And so here I keep this Buddha on here as well. And then I keep this, which I actually, at Georgetown, one of my friends, we would often go to Mass together because I would ask him, like, I really wanted to learn about different religions, and I always had these questions. And the cool part about Georgetown was you could kind of talk about all this, and it was very part of the norm. You could, our classes, you could easily join. I was in a class called Church for the 21st Century, and we talked all about all these topics very openly. And so this is like the Last Supper, like an image of that. And so I keep that on there too. And I think for me, it's having all of these, like, it is so, there's no contradiction. It is all like one. And it reminds me of that point, to keep an open mind. And the same, like humility, open-mindedness, understanding, all of these things are like very important qualities that I want to remember. So, and so keeping these are as a constant reminder of that like harmony is something that really helps my spiritual life. So, so there are some elements that I always keep. And then usually we have something called Prasad, which is, I love this concept because it's really any food, any offering. It doesn't even need to be food. It could be anything that you offer with your whole heart. And there's so many myths and parables that we learn as young kids that even if you only have like a grain of rice, it's not even cooked. You have a grain of rice, you can put that. If you have a shell, you can put it, really whatever you would want to put. But the most important, as Mahatma Gandhi said too, is that feeling of true like love and faith. Like when you give that, whatever it is, even if that's the other thing, we have something called Manas Puja, which is mental worship. And the concept behind that, which is a set of verses that we sing, is basically that let me, at minimum, like, even if I don't have something physical, if I don't have money to buy flowers every day and I can't offer flowers at the altar, let me offer the flowers of these 15 virtues. And it lists out all of these virtues. And I just wanted to share that list. So the virtues, I humbly offer these flowers of divine virtues at your feet: honesty, altruism, desirelessness, modesty, absence of delusion, humility, love, serenity, absence of jealousy, contentment, the supreme flower of nonviolence, control of the senses, compassion, knowledge, and forgiveness. With these 15 flowers, I worship you in the sanctum of my heart. So learning that, where you don't need to have the external means to do this or that, but your virtues, which everybody can act with compassion at any time, regardless of socioeconomic barriers and things like that. So that's a very important reminder, I think.
Great. I just wanted to make your screen as big as possible so we could all see. And it's interesting. I identify as Christian. Was technically confirmed Methodist, but I like to say I'm denominationally promiscuous. I hop around to whatever church feels most comfortable. But I just recently read a book called An Altar in This World by Barbara Brown Taylor, and it talks about, creating a space where you're worshiping all the time. And sometimes that's literally making a space where you're putting what inspires you and reminds you of God. And yours is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Thank you.
I have another question in the chat that is about yoga and the exercise classes that we see now. Is it offensive in any way that folks practice those without it being religiously Hindi? And the writer says, I hope not, because I love all I learn about your religion.
That's a great question. So as I said before, right, yoga is that connection, and there is a deep history with that word, and it coming from our scriptures, and we often use this word in so many ways in when we learn about Hinduism. And I think part of Hinduism also is that physical health, physical like strength, so that you have, we have this body, and we have to nourish this body such that we can do God's work. And it's important to manifest our, and take care of our physical strength and our physical abilities as well. And so when we use the word yoga, we don't usually mean it as that like physical exercise. So, but definitely I have seen like how in these, years as yoga classes have picked up and things like that, how, but there also is kind of this background that is laid about a little bit about what that word yoga means and how ancient that history is with that word. And I think just kind of understanding that some of the words we use in mainstream, even like karma, like a lot of these words, right? We just a lot of these concepts do come from age-old traditions, and maybe understanding that it's understanding it in its wholeness about how much history and what other ways that word, how that originated and what it came from, would be a nice practice.
I'm glad that I think it was Lucy asked that question, because I think that's one I get from students every day at Elon. Am I allowed to do this? So I appreciate your answer.
And I think part of like learning, it's just even that openness to say like exactly this question, if we're not sure about something. That's what I learned honestly most like from Georgetown, was that if you are not sure what to do, ask humbly with the intention that you want to learn, that you actually want to hear what they have to say. For example, I went to we have an imam at Georgetown, and I wanted to learn more about Islam. And when I went to their service, I did not know what to do, and I was totally fine with that. And I went with a friend, and I said, I want to learn. I really don't know, when to do what, but if you don't mind, and I would love to learn, so I can follow, your lead, or you can tell me if I do something incorrectly. But I think just that openness to say, I don't know, but I would like to learn, and then actually want to learn, because someone might tell you, okay, you did this wrong. And something big in Hinduism that we talk about is our ego, and that the small s self versus the big S self. And many times we act out when that little ego gets crushed. But actually we want to crush that little ego, because that's what will help us connect with our higher sense of self, right? So just remembering that when those small ego crushing moments happen, it is good, because we don't want that part to like blow up and get bigger. We want that to be. So when we go in with that mindset of actually learning, it's in fact, it's good to ask. I'm so glad this question was posed. Thank you for asking. Yeah.
Yes, I love that message, because I work at a university, but all these folks who are here were curious. And I love that you're so willing to invite that. I'm looking at our time, and I know there's one more question that we haven't addressed, and it's from Elle, and she's asking, because she knows that you've already spoken about it a little bit already, to expand on how you incorporate your spiritual practice into your daily life and work.
Definitely. So as I, so in my life, like schedule wise, I start my day with prayer and I end my day with prayer. And it's between music, between meditation, between reading scriptures, and so several of these practices to kind of incorporate, all these yogas. But importantly, just like, I want to fill my whole life with that spiritual atmosphere. And so what I tried to do actually, even at work, how can I make all of these encounters with the nursing staff, everyone, especially in this pandemic time. I was actually redeployed back to medicine, even though I finished that portion of my training because we need help with the pandemic. And I think that all of these moments, working with any encounter, if it's the person who is turning over the beds for the next patient, if it's the cafeteria employee who's worked, now 12 hours, serving that same mac and cheese with so much happiness, whatever, each encounter, like the person who's by the parking lot helping, to swipe us in. So all these moments are moments that we can bring God into. And even if we're not directly, our mouth isn't saying words of prayer, there can be actions of prayer, basically. So sometimes, though, even when I do want to just take a break, if I just go. And the thing about we have the word mantra. You've maybe heard this word mantra. So mantra is like a word or a phrase which connects us back, that union, brings us that union with God. So I always keep that mentally in my mind, and I just repeat it. Because no matter what you're doing, sometimes, you're doing your laundry, you're folding your clothes, your mind doesn't need to be blank. Like I can think of that phrase and I can keep saying it in my mind. Over if I'm driving, if I'm at a stoplight. So there are just very actionable, small ways to just make every moment a moment of prayer. So that's what I try to do.
That is so awesome. And I invite everyone to start thinking of more ways to incorporate that. Oh, you are a treasure. We are so grateful to have hosted you. And I had a trip window just then. So for folks who are on the call, we have recorded this with Pallavi's permission later. I may be able to send it to you.
Yes.
Great. There you go. We got it.
Can I actually end with one poem?
Yes.
So me and my sister both keep this poem with us. This hanging in our dorms. It's called Footprints in the Sand, and you may have heard this poem, but I'll read it out in case it's new for anybody. And even if not, Uncle always says you can never repeat a good thing too many times, which is very true. So one night a man dreamed that he was walking along the beach with God. Across the sky flashed scenes from his life. For each scene, he noticed two sets of footprints, one belonging to him and the other to God. When the last scene of his life flashed before him, he looked back at the footprints he noticed. He noticed that many times along the path of life, there was only one set of footprints. He also noticed that it happened at the very lowest and saddest times of his life. This bothered him, and he questioned God about it. God, you said that once I decided to follow you, you'd walk with me all the way. But I have noticed that during the most troublesome times in my life, there is only one set of footprints. I don't understand why, when I needed you the most, you would leave me. God replied, my child, I love you, and I would never leave you during your times of trial. When you have seen only one set of footprints, it was then that I carried you. And so I just want to, pray that we all stay connected, whether it's we are actually in touch with words or not, but we stay connected, that we stay safe, and that, yeah, we just keep moving forward to whatever goal we have decided is our goal. So just thank you so much.
Thank you. And again, thunderous applause. And may it be so. And hopefully for folks listening, I'll see you tomorrow for Winterfaith Day 3. May peace go with you and have a great night. Bye, everyone.